Welcome, everybody, to the War Party Podcast with me, your host, Chris Warren. It is so happy to be back here for episode 7 of the War Party. And guys, what a week it has been for us because the United States of America is at war with Iran. We are at war with Iran. This is something I've been dreaming about since I was a little kid. I've been so excited to go toe-to-toe with the Ayatollah. This is the fulfillment of the neocon prophecy. This is it, guys. We're finally going after the big dogs. We're going after Iran, and we're wrecking them. And listen, this episode's being recorded this Sunday, and the situation has been changing rapidly. Like, I was up all last night reading news and making calls and discussing the situation. So I just want to apologize in advance if anything I say is outdated by the time you listen to this, because everything is changing like every 5 minutes on that scenario. And I can't, at a certain point, I got to release an episode. I can't just be, doing it in real time. I apologize. I haven't figured out the live streaming. Maybe we'll do that on Twitch one day. I don't know if someone savvy, tech savvy wants to handle that for me. Be an intern? I've never had an intern before. That could be fun. You can DM me about that. But guys, I'm elated. I'm so elated. We're at war with Iran. I know I can't stop saying that. And I will say that the fact that the mission name, I believe, is Epic Fury, little cringe, to be honest. Would we let a Reddit poll name this operation? What are we doing? Say what you want about Trump. He's usually pretty good about optics and like branding and PR. And this is an L for him. This is a misstep. But, the man bombed Iran. I'll let it slide. Guys, we have devastated Iran in the past 24 hours, I think it's been. It's been maybe a little more. It's like 30 hours at the time of me recording this. We have destroyed most of their high military command. We destroyed their head of PR, which was hilarious. I'll put a picture of him up here. Just looks like a white guy in a turban. I don't know how he ended up in Iran, but he was on the wrong side. We had to get him. And guys, the biggest one, we killed the Ayatollah. The Ayatollah is dead. We are smoking Ayatollah packs tonight all over the country. That's fucking awesome. The Ayatollah has been like an evil cartoon villain. He's been like the Cobra Commander of my generation. Look at this guy. He's fucking evil. He has been in charge of the Islamic State of Iran pretty much my whole life. I think the current or the previous Ayatollah, because he's fucking dead now, reigned for like 30 years, something like that, consistently. And for anyone that's being like an Iran apologist, because I see a lot of people, American imperialism, you're bombing Iran. What are you doing? That's evil. You're an aggressor. Actually, guys, America's the real threat to world peace because, look, they're invading Iran. They're blowing Iran up. First of all, shut the fuck up. Secondly, we're not invading Iran. I've been seeing a lot of misinformation on that. We're not invading Iran. We haven't put any boots on the ground. We are just blowing them up. We are shooting missiles from the most high-tech warships on the planet, and they are hitting dudes in the forehead from like 100 miles away. It's awesome. From a military logistics standpoint, it's fucking awesome. And Iran did this thing where they tried to clap back at us. They launched missiles back at our bases. I think they tried to target something like 20 bases in the Middle East. Don't quote me on that. The number might be up or down from that. But they shot missiles at a ton of our bases in the Middle East, and they didn't do shit. We were launching interceptors. We stopped them. They did hit one base, I believe, in Bahrain, where actually a friend of mine was stationed. Not currently, thank God. He's safe. But in the past, like a decade ago, he was stationed there. So we talked about that a little bit. But unfortunately, I will say, as of right now, at March 1st, me recording this podcast here, Iran has killed 3 U.S. service members. And I just want to take a moment to send my condolences to those service members and their families, because I know we have fun on this podcast. We joke around a lot. But I love America. I love the men and women that serve this country. And I want to send my condolences because they were serving the country and they died in the line of duty. And that is genuinely a tragedy. And that is very unfortunate. But in their memory, we have annihilated the Iranian regime. And I hope that would make them happy. I also like to take a moment talking about this. A lot of people, for whatever reason, have assumed I'm like a veteran. Like, I even had a guy DM me, like, as a fellow veteran, I want to be so clear. I am not a veteran. I have never served in any branch of the U.S. military or any military. I didn't even do, like, JROTC or whatever it's called. I have no combat experience. I have not been trained for combat. I have not served in any branch of the military or the government of any kind. I am not a veteran. I want to be so clear on that. I think people get confused because I wear this hat, which I want to be clear is not stolen valor. This was given to me by a friend who crewed this ship. It was a gift, and I wear it to remind myself of him because he's away on boats a lot of the time. Ships. He would get mad at me for saying boats. Ships. And it reminds me of him, one of my absolute best friends from growing up. We're still very close, and I wear it in his honor. He's not dead or anything. I want to be clear. It's not like in his memory. He's still very much alive and loving the Iran situation. But that's why I have this hat. I'm not a veteran of any kind. I do have the utmost respect for our military, both active service and our veterans. And I just wanted to clear that up real quick because I am not trying to do any stolen valor shit. That shit's lame as fuck. That's horrible to do. And I'm not attempting to. So I just want to clear the air. I am not a veteran. I don't really know why people assumed I was. I've never implied I was a veteran. I've never made any notions towards that. But wanted to clear that up. I've never served. Look at me. I'm a bitch, dude. I'm on a microphone. This is where I belong. The closest I will ever come to serving in combat is if like a despotic regime takes over, I will probably try to weasel my way into the propaganda wing and talk about how our fearless leader is a great guy. Honestly, Kim Jong-un, or because there's not that many dictators left, Kim Jong-un, any of those guys wants to hit me up, I could do numbers for you, dude. Check out my Instagram presence. I could do something for the regime. I could rehab this PR. So that's probably the closest I'll ever come to serving if it ever comes to that. Like most war profiteers and people that are excited about war and follow war, like geopolitics, military nerds in my experience, myself included, total pussies. I'll own that, right? I'm a total pussy. I have never been in a fight. I have never been punched in the face, and you can tell that by the way I act, that I don't think violence is a real possibility for me. And that's a little delusional. That got me into a lot of trouble when I was a drug addict and alcoholic. Granted, I was like 113 pounds back then, so it was like hitting a girl. No one ever like put me in my place. I had a lot of friends who were much bigger and scarier than me and like actual real criminals that for whatever reason took a liking to me and kind of kept me safe. So I'm appreciative to them. That was a bit of a sidetrack. Just wanted to clear the air on that. I am a bitch. I have never served. I will never serve. And I have great respect to those who have served. So thank you for not being a bitch and protecting this country because we need you. But yeah, we went in and we destroyed Iran. The Ayatollah is dead. Most of their high command is dead. Most of their missile sites are blown up. Most of their military infrastructure is blown up. We have devastated that country. It's only been like 30-something hours, and it's pretty much over. It's pretty much over. Anyone thinking World War III is going to come out of this is a little bit of a fearmonger and doesn't really know geopolitics because Russia had initially said, hey, if you touch Iran, they're our ally. We'll back our boys. And they have done shit. They haven't done anything. And it's because they can't do anything, dude. They can't even take over Ukraine. They're so preoccupied with that. Most of their high-tech military gear is preoccupied or has been destroyed over the last couple of years. And so they just have to sit there and watch helplessly as Iran gets pummeled into the ground by the might of the U.S. empire. Also, with that, a lot of people are like, oh, China's going to step in for Iran because they're allies. Dude, China doesn't really operate like that. China is very smart, and they know their strengths and they know their weaknesses. And I know China's a big enemy of the podcast, and it's, again, I want to reiterate, don't hate the player, hate the game. I have great respect for how the Chinese play the game. They are nimble navigators in geopolitics, but they're not good at fighting wars. They've shown that time and time again. Like the few times they've sent UN troops, donated troops to the UN, they've fallen apart. They've fallen apart. They've panicked. Other UN service battalions don't really want to work with them because you have to babysit the Chinese because their command structure is so much based on nepotism that those at the top like panic and freak out and give bad orders and retreat and just drop the ball on everything. So the fact that the Chinese can't handle like peacekeeping missions in Africa, they're not going to come in and save Iran with their military might. And furthermore, the air defenses being used by Iran to stop American and Israeli forces were made by China and Russia. And they didn't really do much. They didn't stop us. They didn't really sorry, I have a zin in my mouth. I've been up all night zinning. My gums are bleeding. I've just been reading news. I'm on like 2 hours of sleep. This is going to be a bit of a chaotic episode. But their air defense systems didn't work. We blew right through them. They couldn't stop us. And these were very similar air defense systems to what was used in Venezuela. So now, in short order of a few months, we have toppled two regimes that were allies to Russia and China that used Russian and Chinese military hardware, specifically air defense, that were completely helpless when push came to shove. So if I was the Russians or the Chinese, I'd be sitting around looking at this like, oh, fuck, that's the stuff we use, and it didn't work. It's not going to go well for us if we get attacked. Thank God we have nukes. And that's really the only thing saving Russia and China from being toppled is their nukes. I'm also a proponent that China's nukes don't really work. That's a whole nother conspiracy theory. There was recently, like 6 months ago, in China, it was discovered because, again, there's so much corruption in China. And to China's credit, I want to give credit's due. Whereas we let people that are like clearly on the Epstein files run around and still be alive, when China discovers corruption, they fucking execute people very publicly on the spot, or they make, if it's too politically tense, they'll make them disappear in the night and you'll never see them again. So China is good about, for how much corruption China has, they are actually pretty good about punishing it when it comes to light. But this one guy in China like 6 months ago was, I forget what his position was, he was some sort of official, and he was in charge of fueling China's ICBMs. And he embezzled all the money that was supposed to be used for rocket fuel, put it in his own bank account, and then he had another company where his buddy worked fill the ICBMs with water instead of jet fuel and write a fake invoice, and they split the profits in like a corruption scheme. And now they're both missing. They both got Xi Jinping doesn't tolerate that, and it didn't end well for them. But that's just the corruption in China that we are aware of as the West. I want that to be clear. China's pretty good at like hiding stuff, and they have a very good propaganda apparatus and control over their people and especially their government. So that's, if we know about that, what other bullshit's going on that we don't know about or that even China doesn't know about? So if they had needed to launch that nuke, it was filled with fucking water. It wouldn't have done anything. If that had been an emergency, America launched 30 nukes at us, we got to retaliate. Fire the missile, and then water comes out of the jet engine and it collapses on the launch pad. So that was another diatribe. But yeah, China can't really do anything about us doing this. They're really more of a political navigator. They flex their economic might, which they're actually very good about doing, as we discussed last week with all the new deals they're doing with countries, kind of fill in the vacuum a lot of the American economic empires left behind. But yeah, China and Russia were helpless. They had to watch Iran get absolutely obliterated. Iran had bragged about all these hypersonic missiles they had, that they were going to, in the first moments of America attacking them, they were going to blow up our whole Navy. Both our aircraft carriers are still there. That's all I'm saying. They're still there. They're doing fine. They're launching planes off the runway. So I guess that was a bit of a bluff, Iran. Kind of a dumb bluff. And you're getting fucked up for it. So I know I want to own that last week I said that we probably wouldn't go to war with Iran, and that if anything did happen, it was going to be like a quick bombing campaign. And would you look at that? I've called it once again. It's almost like all I do is follow geopolitics, and I know these things. Now, granted, I kind of implied it wouldn't be this intense of a bombing campaign, and I'll own that. I underestimated the Donnies want to get rid of Iran. I guess me and him are similar in that regard. And so I'll own that. I underestimated how much we would commit to this. I did think a lot of the stuff we were putting out there was for show to try to push Iran to regime change from within, but I guess we decided to help them along a little bit. and by destroying their whole government. And also now, so many Iranians are messaging me because I made a couple short form videos about things going on over the last couple days. And it's just like the Iranians in America, which all call themselves Persians for some reason. I think that's very funny because even like the guy that they support was called the Shah of Iran. And it is funny that like they're like, no, actually, this is great. And the Iranian people wanted this. And there is a large contingent of Iranians on the ground that have been protesting the government that definitely are thrilled about this. I don't think they thought they would be bombed themselves. That kind of sucks when you're cheering for your government to get overthrown and then you get fucking eviscerated in an airstrike against your government. That's a rough deal. But it does look like we will be getting regime change in Iran. They might hold out and pick a new Ayatollah. I've heard rumors of who it may be. I don't want to speak on that because probably by the time I've uploaded this episode, that'll already have changed. So I don't want to, what's the point? We'll talk about that next week when it's more solidified. But Iran could hold on to a new version of its regime and stay as like a neutered version of itself. But I do think with how much America's committed to this, we are going to push for like a Western-backed kind of puppet state, which would be cool. This has also caused a blockage or a delay at the Strait of Hormuz, which I always mispronounce, so don't get mad at me. You know what I'm talking about, that little place on the Iran and where like this Arabian Peninsula meet that all the oil goes through. You know what I'm fucking talking about. But that's caused a huge delay because obviously there's all sorts of warplanes flying through there and warships, and it's made commercial oil tanker shipping very difficult there, which has caused a delay in oil shipments around the world from that region, and also because Iran attacked a bunch of countries in the Middle East that had U.S. bases on them, that were U.S. allies. That's also disrupted all of their oil situation because they're clearly preoccupied with like, hey, we got to shoot interceptors at these fucking missiles coming, and we're at war, that we didn't really sign up for. America just kind of committed to us to it. But again, you're colonies, so that's when the big dog says it's time to go, you're going to go. A lot of people have theorize that this could lead to massive oil spikes in the next week of gas getting up to like $4 or $5 a gallon. Where I live right now, gas is like $2.90 something a gallon. I hope that doesn't happen. It could happen. I don't have enough insight into the oil market because, again, I'm more of a military-industrial complex guy. I know a little bit about the oil market, but not enough to confidently predict that. But just keep that in mind. Oil prices could surge, and that could affect you at the pump potentially, but we'll keep an eye on that over the next week to see what comes of that, if anything. In terms of the holding of the Hormuz Strait, the U.S. has also completely destroyed the Iranian Navy, which wasn't super impressive. It's not an impressive Navy to begin with, but it was destroyed. If you remember, decades ago, we did the same thing when Iran started wiling out, threatened U.S. shipping. We destroyed their whole Navy. So this is just kind of we spun the block, did it again. Their Navy's destroyed. Their Army's destroyed. Their infrastructure's destroyed. Their leadership's destroyed. And apparently, as of like 2 hours ago, Trump has agreed to have open discussions with the new leadership of Iran as they decide who the new Ayatollah is going to be and their new leadership's going to be, because they don't have much to pull from their ranks. They've all been killed. So we'll see how those talks go and where we end up with that. I do want to note, though, on a bit of a downside, America is rushing to finish the job with Iran because we are rapidly running out of interceptor missiles. As Iran launches counterattacks, interceptors, for those that don't know, it's kind of a category of missile. There are a couple that are called interceptors, but it's more of a category of missile. And basically, when, for instance, in this example, Iran shoots a big missile at us, right, at one of our bases, we shoot another missile at that missile and try to explode it in the sky so it doesn't, like its payload doesn't reach the target. And we have a ton of them, but we're running out because they are very hard to manufacture. We don't really have as many of them as we'd like the world to believe. And in my opinion, we have wasted a large portion of our stockpile of interceptors in this Iranian mission when we should be saving those for a war against China. Because these interceptors take a very long time to replenish. It takes a very specialized skill set. It's going to take us years to restock how many interceptors we've used over this last little period in the Middle East. And so that is a bit concerning. I do think that overthrowing the Iranian regime is cool and awesome from like a pure patriotic, I was raised in like in a post Cold War. Like, the Cold War never ended in my house. That's how I was raised. The Cold War was still going on. That's kind of why I'm a little neocon coded, as the Gen Z kids say. But while I do think on a personal level it's very cool we fucked up Iran. I've wanted that since I was a little kid. They're a historic enemy of America. Anyone who's saying this is, oh, dude, Iran's not that bad. Dude, they chant death to America. They've turned our embassy in Tehran into a museum of, like, American imperialism and how bad we are. I don't have much sympathy for them. That being said, they couldn't, like, I don't know if they were the biggest threat that we had to overthrow. Because, yes, they try to build a nuke all the time, and like every 5 years, the new American president, whoever it is, has to negotiate a new nuclear deal with Iran. That's what Trump was just doing. That's kind of what it was used. I wouldn't say it caused. It was used as the pretext to going in and bombing them because they didn't want to negotiate with us the way we wanted them to, I suppose. I'm of the opinion, a little conspiratorial, Iran never wanted to build a nuke. Because here's the thing. Iran's been trying to build a nuke since like the 80s, and it's been like, almost 50 years. They still don't have one. And I could make a joke about, Iran's so incompetent, a bunch of idiots can't even build a nuke. I think if they really wanted to, they could have built a nuke by now. They have Chinese connections. They have Russian connections. They have a lot of top nuclear scientists. You know, it's not like they're dumb people. Like, they could have done it. I think part of why they don't have a nuke is because that's their negotiating chip. They negotiate their nuclear program to kind of navigate politically their space in the Middle East and apply pressure to the Western powers and secure their own position. And the thing is, if they don't have a nuclear program at all, right, then they have nothing to bring to the bargaining table, and they're kind of at the whims of the Western powers, and that's not good for them. If they actually build a nuke, well, that's a real fucking problem, and then you're gonna get got. You know, the West wouldn't really tolerate that if they were truly like 5 days away from a nuke. The entirety of Iran would be glass. And they know this. Again, the Iranian leadership, for all their faults for how evil they are, they're smart. Most world leaders are smart. That is a pet peeve of mine when people are like, oh, this person's dumb. It's like, nah, they're kind of in charge of a massive nation of millions of people that is somewhat functioning. They got to be at least a little smart. Or if they're not smart, the people around them, their advisors and everything, the people in the top positions are relatively smart and intelligent, have an understanding of what's going on in the world. And so, yeah, that's why I don't think they wanted to ever build a nuke. They wanted to stay in this gray area where they could negotiate the potential of them having a nuke into political capital and negotiating power to try to get what they wanted. And I guess it was all for naught because America blew them up anyway. They weren't able to flex it as much as they've been able to in the past, and they got absolutely eviscerated. The regime's gone. And as we discussed last week, a lot of the reason we're doing this is because Israel, because I don't want to go into a whole diatribe because we covered it last week, but just a Spark Notes reminder. Israel knows that the American people are pulling away from supporting them. They know that in maybe 10 years or so, I'm not going to commit to a timeline, but in the next couple elections, there won't be any pro-Israeli candidates anymore, or at least not very powerful, popular ones, because the whole attitude of the American people shifted away from Israel. And so they're trying to prepare themselves for a post-American supported world where they can survive. And Iran's really the last big one they had to get rid of, and they were able to leverage America into doing it for them. And so now Iran's off the table, and Israel's position is much more secure in the Middle East and will continue to be for like at least the next decade because of this action. So they kind of got everything they wanted. And when you look at the situation in the Middle East, we have kind of accomplished the neocon dream. And I think I've talked about this on the podcast before, but basically the whole point of going into Iraq after 9/11, we're not going to get into a whole 9/11 conspiracy thing because that's going to be a whole nother episode. That really deserves like 3 hours on its own. But basically, like the old neocons, right? Like Cheney and Rumsfeld and all those guys wanted to go into Iraq and do reverse domino theory. They thought that, okay, if we can flip Iraq and put in, because he is a dictator, he is a bad dude, Saddam, he is oppressing his people. If we can go in there and we can flip it to a pro-West democracy, like a puppet government for us, then we can do that with every other Middle Eastern country. Kind of like how we thought if Vietnam went communist, that all the countries in Southeast Asia would also go communist. So we had to go fight Vietnam. We were doing the reverse of that, where it's, okay, if we flip Iraq to be pro-West democracy, then we can cause a domino effect of flipping the rest of the Middle East to that, or at the very least to being our allies. And then we can control all the oil in the Middle East, and that will really secure the future of the petrodollar, because everything comes back to protecting the petrodollar. And if that had worked, there'd probably be a statue of Dick Cheney on every street corner in America. He'd be an American hero. Unfortunately, it didn't work. We really underestimated the situation, got stuck in a 25-year global war on terror that is still ongoing, that kind of drained the coffers of the American empire because we didn't know when to call it quits. That's, again, a whole nother episode. But we have kind of on the back end, finally now, after 26 years, kind of accomplished that, albeit not the way we intended. Because when you look at it, right, we just got rid of Iran, the last big power player. And with Iran, who funds a lot of terrorism in the region, you get rid of, now that they're pretty much destroyed. We'll see how it plays out, but they're pretty much destroyed. It's pretty much over for them. You get rid of Hezbollah, you get rid of Hamas, you get rid of the Houthis funding. It causes a cascading effect of getting rid of a lot of their funded extremists in the region. Lebanon's completely destroyed. They can't do anything. Syria's been flipped by basically, I'm pretty sure it was Mossad that put in the new leader of Syria, who is a former Al-Qaeda guy, former ISIS guy. I don't remember which one. Forgive me on that. It's been a minute. But we flipped Syria from a pro-Russia dictatorship with Assad to a seemingly pro-West puppet. We own Iraq. The Saudis, despite what you'll see in the media, are pretty pro-West at this point. They're pretty pro-us. They're destroying Yemen, and now without Iranian funding, the Houthis are pretty much fucked. So that'll take care of the Yemen situation. Oman's always stayed out of things. They're chill. They're like the Middle East Switzerland. We could do a whole episode on them. They're very fascinating. All the Emiratis, the Qataris, all these different people are now very pro-West. Kuwaitis pro-West. So we've pretty much flipped the whole Middle East to either being destroyed, being a puppet state, or being a pro-West ally of ours. And Egypt's over there. They don't do anything. They've stayed out of it for a long time now. They just mind their business and sit there. Their economy's fucked, so they're just struggling to feed their people. So the Middle East has been completely neutralized, albeit probably not worth the cost of 26 years and several thousand American casualties to do it. It was we were hoping it was going to be like a 2 to 5 year plan. It ended up being like a 26-year plan. It's still ongoing. Iran's still there. We're bombing them. We're probably going to beat them, but they're still there. And it really just leaves one country that's problematic for America in the Middle East. Only one's left. And, they'll tell you they're our greatest ally. But here's the thing about being a U.S. ally. Is it doesn't end well for you once we don't need you. Look at Gaddafi. Look at Saddam. Look at Osama. Look what's about to happen to Zelensky in Ukraine. We're going to throw him under the bus. I've discussed this before. And now it's, really Israel's our ally in the Middle East. And now that all the enemies are out, and we have good relations with the Saudis, which are objectively a much better ally. They have all the fucking oil. They're pretty militarily capable. They're pretty pro-West, despite what you'll see tidbits in the media. Maybe we don't need Israel anymore. Just saying. Maybe they've outlived their usefulness. And wouldn't that be funny if we had a red wedding situation with Israel, like Netanyahu's like, Trump, I can't do an Israeli accent, but Trump, we did it. We defeated all the Islamic extremists and anti-West states in the Middle East. The Middle East is ours. And Trump just looks at him and goes, ours? Buddy, you got the wrong idea. And just fucking eviscerates Israel. That would be hilarious. I think a lot of American people would be very pro that. It's not going to happen, unfortunately, because Trump is so controlled by the Epstein leverage they have on him, which we discussed last week, how Epstein was a whole Mossad plot to compromise U.S. politicians, Trump getting caught up in that. So he won't do that. Part of the reason he is bombing the shit out of Iran is because he's trying to, A, distract from the Epstein files, as we discussed last week, but also because Israel kind of told him to do it, and he wants to keep Israel happy right now because he's pretty controlled, and Israel's leveraging the last of its leverage over U.S. politicians to get this done. And so that's kind of a long-winded way of explaining the situation. So we fucked up Iran. China and Russia are terrified because it was all their tech and their tech didn't work, and we took Iran, we took Venezuela, so they're sitting there with, really Russia got fucked. Russia has no more allies in the Middle East. Russia was boys with Assad. That's why Assad lives in Moscow. Syria's been flipped. They were boys with Iran. Iran looks like it's going to collapse in a matter of hours. So Russia's position is pretty much completely out of the Middle East. China... similar situation. Though China will probably start to try to economically win over like the UAE. I would go on that's what I'd do if I was China. They might have a bigger plan than me. The Chinese are pretty smart. So I would defer to what they're thinking is a good idea. But the UAE and Saudi Arabia have a bit of a split, as we discussed a couple weeks ago, because the UAE is kind of funding anti-government forces in Yemen, and Saudi is supporting the Yemenese government as a puppet state, and there's a whole civil war going on down there, and it caused a lot of tension between the UAE and Saudi Arabia over that, and China could come in and kind of pull the UAE aside and be like, hey, man, you don't want to deal with these Saudis. They're being assholes. I get it. Fuck being pro-West. Let us help you out. The U.S. is going to support Saudi Arabia in this and tell you to calm down and try to keep everything peaceful and in the peace. Saudi Arabia is going to get everything it wants. You're the guys who need to be pushing this militarily. Let us help you out. And so I think we need to be fearful of that's going to be China's new path into the Middle East, probably now that Iran is all but destroyed. But overall, a very cool situation in the Middle East. A lot of interesting stuff. We'll be able to talk about more of the details of how this was all done with the various airstrikes and missiles and all that. I don't have that information in front of me. Well, I do have a little bit, but it's kind of, I don't know how accurate it is because it's all coming out so quickly. I don't know if I trust the sources, so I don't want to misspeak and give you fake news, as they say. So maybe we'll do a breakdown of the tech side, the military hardware side next week when all that information's solidified in public. But needless to say, we wiped Iran so quick. It is kind of the U.S. military's on a win streak recently. Like, took out Venezuela in 2 hours by kidnapping Maduro. Took out pretty much all the Iranian upper leadership and the Ayatollah in a matter of 10 hours. Like, we're kind of on a win streak right now. The only way we could fuck this up is if we go into Iran and put boots on the ground as like a peacekeeping force to try to rebuild it in our image. I think we've learned our lesson from Iraq, although never underestimate the stupidity of Washington. They could do something stupid like that. That would be horrible. That would be so bad. You're going to get so many U.S. servicemen put in danger and killed if you do that. So please don't do that. Just bomb the shit out of them. Encourage them to put a pro-West guy in charge, maybe have the CIA pull the levers on that a little bit with elections or local militia groups, things like that. But let's not put any Western troops in Iran. I think the job's done. They're crippled. It's over. And right on the other side of Iran, more crazy shit's happening because earlier this week, right before this, it's been overshadowed because of the U.S. bombing of Iran. Afghanistan and Pakistan have gone to war. And I've covered a little bit in my short form content over the last couple months. Pakistan and Afghanistan have been having a lot of border skirmishes where their troops just kind of shoot each other up. Afghanistan's been funding a lot of terrorism in Pakistan, and those terrorists have been attacking the Pakistani government. There was a huge raid by the Pakistani police to go in and take out like a whole sleeper cell a couple months ago. That was a huge shootout. That was like a pretty interesting event. But it's finally boiled over. Pakistan and Afghanistan are officially at war. Everyone's kind of like, maybe let's not do this, guys. But meanwhile, they're like, fuck it. They're going at it. Something very funny in this is Afghanistan has said they're going to use suicide squads. Literally like the movie. They're going to use suicide squads. You have the Afghanistani peacemaker over there. Arab John Cena is over there. But they're using suicide squads, and they're bringing back, what they mean by that is they're bringing back, like, suicide bombers, like dudes in explosive vests. And that is crazy to me. Because, first of all, it's unnecessary. Like, we have drones now. If anyone's been watching the Ukraine conflict, one of my biggest complaints is it's kind of fucking lame. because they just load up drones with C4 and fly them into buildings and positions. And, for like a $3,000 Radio Shack drone, you can kill a lot of enemy combatants. It's very economically efficient. It doesn't put your troops really in any harm's way. As we've seen, they're developing all these drones and counter drones and jammers and fiber optic cable to avoid jammers. It's a whole arms race with drone technology. And Afghanistan has to be aware of this. They have to be aware, we could use drones to suicide bomb, but no, we're not going to let robots and AI take people's jobs, okay? Suicide bomber jobs are an important part of the economy, and we need to protect these guys with unions. We got to get back out there, do it the old-fashioned way. And on some level, I kind of respect that. That is kind of goated, if you will. That in the face of all this, Afghanistan just we're going to do it old school. We're going to put Ahmed in a bomb vest. We're going to run him at the Pakistani border, and he's just going to blow up 20 guys. It's going to be awesome. So, kudos to them. That is terrifying. Can you imagine if you're a Pakistani soldier and you're getting ready to go up against the Afghanis and you're like, hey, we're a bigger country than them. We have way more money. We have a more powerful military. We're better trained. We got this. And then you hear just oh, yeah, they're just going to drive vans into our forward operating bases and blow everyone up. They don't give a shit if they die. That's a scary enemy to fight. So, what are you going to do? Also, it is funny that, the U.S. left behind all that military gear a couple years ago when we pulled out of Afghanistan, and you remember, all the videos of the Taliban putting on, night vision for the first time and dressing like Navy SEALs and, learning how to fly all these helicopters and drive all these Hummers and armored vehicles we left behind, which they were having fun with it. Imagine how fun that is. You win a war against the greatest empire on earth. America finally pulls out of your country after 20-plus years. You've been fighting the whole time. And then you and your boy are like, hey, you want to go play dress up as Navy SEALs? And we can use the night vision to drive this Hummer? Hell yeah, dude. Let's drift it in the former American base. That's got to be a fun day for you as a brave mujahideen, Taliban warrior. But yeah, also, people were theorizing, myself included, that when we left a lot of that gear back, when we pulled out of Afghanistan, that this is the exact reason we were doing it. We were doing it to leave a country, Afghanistan, who would predictably be a little unstable. The Taliban have held it down way better than I thought they would. I thought they would have fallen to infighting right away, but they've been pretty stable over the last couple of years building their new government. But it's right between Iran and Pakistan, two kind of enemies of ours, and we just left a terrorist organization in charge with a bunch of Western top-notch hardware. And now we're seeing the fruits of that investment, if you will, as Pakistan is now having to deal with a much stronger Afghanistan than they otherwise would have. And Pakistan will probably win. It's kind of that meme of a nuclear bomb versus a coughing baby. There's no way Afghanistan's going to win traditionally. Now, if Pakistan goes in and they try to hold the land and occupy it, they'll run into the same issue America ran into, where you're just running over IEDs every day. A guy shoots a mortar at your base, runs away, snipers, things like guerrilla warfare. That kind of made Afghanistan so bloody for us that we had to get out of there. But if it's just a conventional war of beating them into submission, Pakistan will probably win, but they're going to get a lot more bloodied now because of all the hardware and military tech we've left behind for Afghanistan. And it's a win-win for us, because as Pakistan and Afghanistan go head-to-head and they destroy each other, we don't really like either of them. So let them tear each other apart. Works for us. Who gives a shit? It doesn't really matter to us who wins as long as they've weakened each other significantly. And I think our hope is that Afghanistan will waste a lot of its stockpile of high-tech munitions, which everyone's like, Pakistan doesn't. Yeah, Pakistan does. Pakistan might be poor, but they've invested a lot in their military and their intelligence apparatus, and they will be wasting a lot of their limited high-tech gear on fighting Afghanistan if they do fully commit. It seems to be at the point where it's still just a glorified border skirmish with launching rockets back and forth and a couple scattered shootouts on the border, but it could progress. And if you're the CIA, you're probably hoping it does, because that could weaken potential enemies in that region of the world, and that could be great for us, and we don't have to lose a single U.S. soldier. So we'll see how that progresses. We'll keep you updated on that. I'll be honest, I've been so preoccupied with the Iran thing. I haven't had enough time to do a deep dive on Afghanistan-Pakistan war. That was going to be today's episode until we blew up all of Iran. So I don't want to speak out of turn, but yeah, that's probably what's going on with Afghanistan and Pakistan right now. Now going back to the Atlantic with the Cuba situation, we talked about the Cuba embargo, how their society was collapsing because we cut off oil from the whole country. And recently something very interesting happened because, and it's unclear the details on this, so if more news comes out about this, forgive me. But right now it's believed that about 10 Cubans living in Miami, anti-communist Cubans living in Miami, proud patriots, probably Republicans. Most Cubans that live in America are Republicans, i.e. Mark Rubio. But these 10 Cubans stole a speedboat in Miami. They then loaded it with automatic weapons, which it's unclear how they got those, probably through the black market. They then drove that boat to Cuba. And when they got towards the shore of Cuba, the Cuban military was like, hey, what are you guys doing? Stop. Hold on. You can't. You're in Cuban water. We're going to come board you and investigate this right now. And the Cubans on the boat, the speedboat Cubans, took their automatic weapons and unloaded on the Cuban government forces. And it resulted in a shootout between the two. And to be fair, being in an open speedboat on the open ocean, trying to get into a gunfight, probably not. I haven't served in the military. I'm not a tactical genius, but that's probably not the best firing platform to be on. And they got lit up by the Cuban government. And I believe 6 of them have been injured. 4 of them died. It's very unclear what their motivation was. All their family that's been interviewed were like, we don't know why they did this or what their motivation was. No one saw this coming. They didn't tell us about this. Now, the family could be lying, but I believe them, They seem pretty upset and shocked by it. And when the U.S. government was asked to comment on it, Mark Rubio just went, that's highly unusual behavior. Which, fair to him, it is. That is highly unusual behavior. Some people are theorizing it's basically the Bay of Pigs 2.0. This was basically the Bay of Pigs 2.0, which for those that don't know, back in the day, the CIA and intelligence apparatus in America got all these anti-Castro Cubans during the Cold War that were in America, and they equipped them with training and military gear and dropped them off near Cuba to go try to overthrow the Castro regime. And they got onto the beaches and were fighting the Cuban military at the time, Castro's regime. And the CIA and intelligence apparatus really thought that, okay, Kennedy's kind of a bitch. He's kind of a bitch. He doesn't want to go into Cuba because he's a fucking liberal commie lover. But if we put these Cubans on the beach, we can argue that, oh, look, it's a natural uprising of the Cuban people against communism. As the big Western power, as the U.S., we have to support this and show people that when they fight communism, we will support them in that. And we can use the fact that it's happening in real time, even though Kennedy doesn't want to get involved in Cuba, this might force his hand to give American air support in the moment. We can pressure him in the moment to committing to this because extenuating circumstances with the CIA-backed Cubans there. And to Kennedy's credit, he saw through this and was like, no, you guys aren't forcing my hand in anything. I know exactly what you're doing. Fuck that. We're not getting involved. And all the Cubans got killed or captured on the beach, and that was the end of the Bay of Pigs. And the CIA was very pissed, and that's probably why they killed Kennedy later over that incident. But Kennedy held firm and didn't commit U.S. Air Forces or troops to assisting the Bay of Pigs rebels. And this, people are saying this is like the Bay of Pigs 2.0 electric boogaloo. And I don't think it is, because the CIA, as much as people might hate them, I personally think they're great. But they are pretty competent at what they do. They've lost a little bit of their touch over the years, but they're still pretty good. And this is just way too sloppy. This is way too sloppy. I don't think this is the CIA. I don't think this is American-backed. I do think this was just 10 guys who got hyped themselves up. I think it was one of those situations where they hyped themselves up as like Cuban refugees. They're like, yeah, we hate we hate the communist regime in Cuba. It made our life horrible. That's why we had to flee our beautiful homeland to come to America. And they're sitting there in Miami with people in similar situations, like-minded, and they're just hyping each other up every night, playing dominoes and drinking and smoking and going like, yeah, we should do something. Someone should do something about this. We could be those guys. We could liberate Cuba. Someone's got to liberate Cuba. And I think one night they yes-anded each other into this over-top scheme. I would assume they were probably a little drunk when they did this, and they're like, fuck it, let's do it now. We can do it. We can free Cuba. And then it's like, guys, no offense. Your heart's in the right place. I hate communism, too. I have empathy for the Cuban people being ruled by communism. But 10 guys in a speedboat with a couple automatic weapons is probably not going to overthrow the Cuban regime that has a pretty sizable, decently trained military. Like, even if you guys each killed 1,000, Cuban military guys, right? That's 10,000 people. You'd still be so outnumbered. Like, I don't know what your plan was there. And if your plan was to, like, sneak in there and like, assassinate leadership or whatever, it's like maybe don't sneak in there on a hot rod speedboat. You basically showed up on something with flames on the side and an aftermarket exhaust, like, those Honda Civics you see at the light going, and we're like, how did we get caught? It's like, all right, man. So that's what's going on there. That'll be interesting to see what that comes out. I'm losing my speech. It'll be interesting to see what comes of that. We'll keep you updated on that, but that's where we're at in that situation right now. In other news, a U.S. Air Force pilot has been caught trying to train the Chinese on how to counter the F-35. Just a reminder, the F-35 it's not our best plane. It's not the hot rod like the F-22 Raptor is, but the F-35 is our most common multi-role fighter jet that the U.S. has, and many of U.S. allies have F-35s too. We export them all over the world. And they're kind of the workhorse of the U.S. Air supremacy. And a lot of people don't like the F-35. We've discussed this before. A lot of people think it's like a bad investment. I think Trump talked shit about it once. I personally think it's cool. I think it's a cool plane. I'm an F-35 apologist, so deal with that, aviation nerds. But this, U.S. Air Force pilot was trying to teach the Chinese how to counter the F-35 and what tactics would work against it, what its full capabilities were, where its weak points were, what they could do to potentially shoot one out of the sky, look for its blind spots, things like that. And this has caused some controversy. It hasn't been as widely reported as some of the other stories because, as you've seen, there's been so much this week. But I am a proponent that guy should be dragged to America and he should be broken on the wheel. That is straight up treason. That is straight up treason. You are teaching the Chinese our weaknesses. And in doing so, if we ever went to open conflict with China, you would be putting U.S. airmen in danger because now they know how to shoot down F-35s or know how to better counter them. That could get U.S. pilots fucking killed, dude. Your supposed brothers in arms that you've betrayed, you're putting them in danger. That's fucked up. And not just the Chinese. Now that the Chinese have this info, they could sell it or otherwise give it to their allies or other anti-American actors who could also now know how to better counteract an F-35, and that could put a lot of U.S. servicemen in severe danger and weaken America's position in the globe and our ability to project power, and that's fucked up. So I say we drag this man. I won't even say his name. I'm not going to give him the satisfaction of that. We're just going to call him traitor. We're going to drag this traitor back. I think we bring him to the reflecting pool in Washington. That big reflecting pool outside the Washington monument. Bring him back to D.C., we'll strap him to the wheel and we'll break him on the wheel. For those that don't know, I'm a history nerd. The wheel is an old form of torture and execution. It was used a lot in the German states during the Holy Roman Empire back in the day. And what you would do is you would take the convicted man and you would tie him by his limbs to a big wagon wheel, like a big comic wheel, so that he was sitting on it, right? And then people would come with hammers, and it was varied a little bit over time and different regions and, how the execution was being doing. But let's talk about the most extreme version, right? Because that's what I think this man deserves. So you would strap them to the wheel, And a guy would go around with usually a jacked guy, needing the big guy, with a huge, like, hammer. I guess the modern day would be a sledgehammer. And they would break their hands and feet. They would smash their hands and feet against the wheel they're tied to, so those are all mangled. And then they would smash their shins and forearms against the wheel, so those are all shattered. And then they would do their knees and elbows. And then they would do whatever where your bicep is and your thighs, and smash those. And then they'd smash your hips in. And then they'd smash your chest in. Break your ribs, smash your ribs in. And by this point, a lot of people would die either through blood loss, shock. That is, you can die from shock. Depending on who you are, your heart can just give out if you get in enough pain or terror. And then they would either let them, if they hadn't died by that point, they'd let them suffer on the wheel till they bled out from internal hemorrhaging. Or if they wanted to be merciful, they would do one last hit to the head and kind of smush your brains out and that. And so that's what I think we should do to this guy. That's why you want to get Americans killed? You want to sell out to China? We'll do that. That's what we can do to you. And that's what I think we should do to people that betray the United States, because we live in the greatest country on earth. And I'm not saying we don't have problems. A lot of people accuse me of being like some sort of American apologist and ignoring any of America's wrongdoing or problems. First of all, there's nothing to apologize for. America fucking rules. I love this country. There's a reason that flag's behind me. It's not like ironic or something. No, I love this fucking country. But despite our flaws, we are the greatest nation in the history of humanity and in the current reign of the U.S. In the current situation of the world, the U.S. reigns supreme as the greatest country on earth. That's why people will build rafts and die in the ocean or cross jungles or work with the cartel just for a chance to maybe get to come here and try to build a better life. They don't do that because this place sucks. They do that because this place is awesome. And when people are like, oh, America's not that great, well, you're usually comparing it to a utopian ideal of what the perfect society could be, which, hey, maybe one day in the future we'll get there. I don't think that's really realistic right now. So then you got to compare it to the real world examples, and they'll compare it to like the Nordic countries, which first of all have a lot of problems we don't have time to get into. They're not as perfect as the average person thinks. But also those are countries of like 5,000 people. Like Norway, for instance, is one that gets brought up a lot. Oh, well, they have great healthcare and quality of life and low, all this other stuff. Yeah, Norway has 5 million people in it. And they're oil rich. For those that don't know, off the coast of Norway is a lot of offshore oil. And the Norwegians' entire economy is based on that oil. So they just kind of lucked out with their spot on the map. When you have 5 million people to support with massive oil reserves, you can make a pretty good quality of life. You can make a pretty stable society. And to be fair to Norway, their government was smart. Back in like the 60s or 70s, they took that oil money and they put it in basically like an index fund, a government index fund where the government itself bought all these stocks and all these different companies and different industries all over the world. So Norway's government has this massive stock portfolio worth like billions of dollars. And the dividends from that help pay for the Norwegian government. And that's how they subsidize their economy. And they actually can do fun stuff where they like can flex their political power. Their geopolitical move is if you piss them off, they will start shedding shares because they own so much stock. They'll start shedding shares of your country's like biggest job creators or biggest companies that have the most economic influence. They'll shed the shares of that company to tank its stock to affect your GDP and cause economic panic in your country. And that's how they're able to flex. So honestly, kudos to the Norwegians. Sorry, that was a diatribe. I just think that's a really cool thing they've done. But yeah, that's why Norway is able to exist in the way it does, is because it has such a perfect storm of great factors that they can get away with that. But name another country that's like big. Oh, China? You mean the place where you actually have social credit scores and it's a full surveillance state and you go missing if you go against the government and you don't really have that much freedom? Yeah, no, that sounds great. Also, by the way, China's pretty cool in some of the bigger cities. I mean, a lot of their infrastructure is paper mache, but to be fair, some of the city living, they have raised a lot of people out of poverty. Go to rural China and tell me that's awesome. Go to some of the smaller third-rate cities and tell me that's awesome. Not the Instagram ones of that city that's like multi-layered or like Shanghai or Beijing or Hong Kong. Go to like some of the third-rate cities and you tell me it's still fucking awesome. It's not like a fucking cyberpunk hellscape industrial wasteland. What other country are you going to name? You want to name the Gulf states? They're all similar to Norway. They're all rich off oil. That's a small population, lots of oil. They're able to do that. You want to name South Korea or Japan? We built South Korea and Japan. They only exist because of us. They also have the highest self-deletion rates in the world. It's not really the wonderland you think it is. People are working like 80 hours a week. There's a lot of misery over there. Not to shit on those countries. I actually think South Korea and Japan are pretty cool, but they're not like this perfect country that some people in the U.S. paint it as. Oh, you want to go to France? Yeah, I don't even have to get into that. Look how that's going, dude. They have like riots every other day. You want to go to Germany? Yeah, okay. That looks fun. That looks like a good time. What, you want to go to the UK where you can get arrested for a tweet? I think they arrested like 12,000 people last year for things they said online. That seems like that's the socialist utopia paradise we're talking about. Like, I just don't understand when people say, oh, America's actually not the best. America sucks. Where else would you like to go? Where else would you like? You want to go to Canada? You want to go to Canada where their social welfare state is failing? Their healthcare system is collapsing because they can't fund it anymore. You're waiting weeks and months to see specialists and doctors that you really should be seeing right away. Their housing market is crazy. You think buying a house in the U.S. is bad? Oh my God, it's impossible in Canada. Their economy only exists because they're right next to America. And there's also a reason you meet a lot of Canadians that now live in the U.S., and it's not because it was so great in Canada. So I think people build this like delusional fantasy land of what some of these other countries are like that they've only ever seen in like TikToks or read one or two articles about or hear one or two stats about and go, that place must be perfect. I want to move to there. And it's like, no, they have a lot of the same problems America has and much, much worse and often in many cases. Like, America's pretty good. Yeah, we have our problems. Yeah, there are entire regions of this country that it's pretty rough to live in and cities and things like that. But overall, America's the best. I won't hear any tolerant. I won't be tolerant of anyone saying like, oh, America's not that great or actually it fucking sucks to live here. I want to live somewhere else. Okay, then get the fuck out. Move somewhere else. This is the best country on earth. Shut the fuck up. You're lucky that you live in America. You should be thanking God every day that you get to live in America. I know I do. Another thing I want to talk about is there was a study where they took several AIs and tried to basically like run them in a war scenario, like in a geopolitical war scenario, and they moved all the information for like various fake countries, but like that were realistic for like GDP and military strength, all those things. And they ran them into these AIs and said, you guys are at war with each other. Figure out like what's the optimal way to handle this. And every single time, the AIs would just demand the other one surrender a bunch of times. And of course, the other one would say no. And when that failed, they would immediately start nuking each other. They would immediately start nuking each other and refuse to surrender. In like every scenario, they just ended up destroying the fictional world they were plugged into. And I think that's really funny. As AI comes into the frame as like potentially people are worried they're going to become our new overlords and they're getting used in more military stuff like we saw on the Maduro raid. It was revealed they used AI for that. That's so funny, dude. That's so funny that's our future is just two basically Civ 6 AIs set to legendary difficulty that are both the Gandhi AI. For those that haven't played it, the joke is that Gandhi's supposed to be this peaceful guy in cultural memory, but his AI in any Civ game is like the most warpath, like despotic guy that will rush nukes as technology and then immediately nuke you. And it's so funny that's the AI we decided to put in these war games, and then they flawlessly followed the game plan. So that's very funny. That's something good to look forward to is AI deciding to nuke everywhere on the planet because they're too stubborn to surrender. I think that could be a lot. If that's how the world ends, then we deserve it. I think this shows us we should not put AI in charge of anything major, especially not nukes. But that was a little terrifying that everyone's trying to get AI to run everything from economics to politics to the military to infrastructure, and then you put them in a scenario with parameters and they just go, we're just going to nuke each other. We're just, fuck it, we'll nuke each other. I'm an AI, what do I care? That's a little disturbing, a little dystopian there. So that's your bright side of the news for this week. Guys, before we get out of here today, I do want to take a moment to be a little self-indulgent. And I apologize about that in advance, but also it's my podcast. I put hours into this a week. I can talk about whatever I want. I'm going to talk about me for a second. I'm going to talk about me. Because today of recording this podcast, it releases on Monday, but I recorded on Sunday. So today right now is March 1st of 2026. And that is an important day for me because that marks my 4-year anniversary of continuous sobriety from all drugs and alcohol. And I haven't touched anything. No drugs, no alcohol. I don't smoke weed. I'm not doing a California sober bullshit. I'm not taking prescriptions. I am full hardcore sober with everything. The only things I have left, the only vices or joys I have left are nicotine. I take Zyns, which I used to quit smoking, but then got way more addicted to them. So I still do the nicotine, still do the Zyns, and I also crush caffeine. I've reduced my caffeine. I used to drink Monster energy drinks like 4 a day when I first got sober. Now it's down to I have 1 cup of black coffee every morning, and I restrict myself to that, except for in rare emergencies when I'm on the road doing gigs, and I'm coming home at like 2 in the morning from Maine or something, and I will take like an energy drink then. But yeah, I'm fully sober. I've been sober for 4 years, and it's been an amazing journey, and so I just want to take today to talk about that. Little info on me. Back when I was at the height of my drinking, my bottom as we call it in AA, the last like 6-7 months of my drinking, every night I would come home to my apartment and I would drink a bottle of vodka and I'd take like 4 or 5 Xanax, and then I'd usually have an emergency 30 rack, so if I ran out of vodka I'd start crushing beers. I liked Yingling. Those were my favorite. I loved a good Yingling. And I would pass out in front of the TV. I had a lawn chair in my apartment and a massive like 60-inch TV or something. And I would just sit there and I would drink alone for hours till I passed out. And occasionally I'd get cocaine when I could find it. And I'd do that. And that was how I lived my life. It stopped being nighttime. It turned to all the time, right? I'd wake up at like 2 in the afternoon because I wasn't working at the time. I'd lost my job through drinking, which is kind of how that goes. But I had a lot of savings, and I had unemployment, so I was living off that. And I would just wake up at 2 in the afternoon, and I would white knuckle it till about 5 o'clock, because I'd also be super hungover. I'd be like throwing up, vomiting bile and sometimes blood. And I would power through till 5 o'clock, and then I was convinced, okay, well, it's acceptable to start drinking at 5:30, so now I'll start drinking. And I would drink a bottle of vodka and a bunch of beers and take a bunch of Xanax, and I would just do that till I passed out. And I never knew when I passed out because I would black out at some point and wake up the next day in my lawn chair, and the whole process would start over again. I'd walk to the liquor store that was legitimately a block away from my house, and that was my routine. And I would eat like 1 meal every 2 days, and through that time, my body fell apart. I got down to 113 pounds, which for me is very skinny. I'm 5'10", and right now I fluctuate between like 165, 170, and that's kind of like a normal resting weight, and I got down to 113, 112 at the end. And I was vomiting blood, and I was like having trouble walking and doing like fine motor skills because my whole body was shutting down. And it was at that time that after I tried to hide my alcoholism, by the end I couldn't anymore. And I'd had several instances where I was just way too intoxicated in public at like shows and stuff, and other comics were starting to notice. It was becoming something I couldn't hide anymore because I had hit it for the better part of a decade. I had my first drink at 18. I had my first drink at actually right before my 19th birthday. This is funny. I used to be a straight edge kid. I would listen to that shitty straight edge hardcore music. I wanted to get X's tattooed on my hands, be one of those guys. And I went to college completely sober. No intention to drink because both my parents were alcoholics. Alcoholism gallops through my family. I mean, I'm mostly Irish, so it makes sense not to fulfill stereotypes. And I was like, okay, I'll go to college. And I went to Syracuse because that's where everyone in my family had gone for generations. So I kind of was like, well, that's where I'll go. And I didn't really put together at the time, at least when I went there, Syracuse was like one of the top 10 party schools in the country back in like 2012, 2013. And so I felt very isolated because I didn't party and everyone was partying. So I spent a lot of time just like playing video games in my room, my dorm room, painting Warhammer figures. Yes, I've always been a weird nerd. And I lived on a floor with a bunch of like frat dudes, like my freshman year, like a bunch of like really party frat dudes. They were all nice to me, but like they would just go party. I'd do my own thing. And eventually I got tired of feeling left out and like I was missing out. And so it was March Madness. Syracuse was in the Final Four, our basketball team. And a guy I knew there, well-intentioned, I don't think he had bad intentions, but was like, hey, man, come on. You're in college. It's the Final Four. Syracuse is here. If we win the game, you should drink. Or no, it wasn't win the game. It was like if, what's his name? One of the players, I think it was a guy called Rakeem Christmas. And he was number 25, which I thought was funny. That was funny. That guy was cool. I hope he went to the league. I don't follow basketball, so I don't know. But it was something about like if he scores a basket on this, like you got to drink. And I was at the point where I was like, I had enough. I was curious. So I said, sure. And sure enough, he scored the basket. And I took it as a sign because Rakeem Christmas, that's funny. Okay, that would be the way I'd start drinking. And I had a Bud Light. And it was gross. I didn't like the taste, so I chugged it. And then I chugged another one. And then I kept drinking. Then I blacked out. The first time I drank, I blacked out. And I didn't do anything crazy, but apparently I just was like an annoying jackass. Like I just wouldn't shut the fuck up. People tried to put me to bed in my room several times. I would get out and just be like causing problems. They're like, yo, the RA is going to come. You're going to get us all in trouble. Like chill the fuck out, man. And I was like, whoa, that was weird. Okay, got to be careful with that. And so I didn't really drink that often because that scared me. But then every time after that, I would drink and I would black out. Every time. Like throw up, get alcohol poisoning, like really bad. I just, like the second I had a drink, my eyes would turn into shark eyes and I would keep drinking. And then, I discovered weed shortly after there, and then it went from like smoking one time to being stoned 24/7 for the next several years. And my drinking, I didn't do it that often, but when I did, I would always black out and be a problem. And that just progressed over the years, and I got into a sales job after college, which, as you know, has a big drinking cocaine culture, and that's when I discovered cocaine. And I don't want to tell my whole story, but basically throughout that process, I got more and more into drugs and alcohol. For years, I was of the opinion that I could be high during the day. I could smoke weed and be high first thing in the morning throughout the day, but I wouldn't drink or touch hard drugs until nighttime. And as long as I did that, I was fine. And there was a period of time where I would get high every morning, and then at night, to unwind, I would get home and I would drink like a 6-pack of beer. And then the 6-pack of beer turned into like a 6-pack of hardcore IPAs, like Road to Ruin by Two Roads. It was like a 9 or 10% alcohol content. And I convinced myself, well, I'm still only having 6 drinks, even though each of these has like the alcohol content of like 2.5 beers, right? And these are the delusions we tell ourselves. And over time it progressed, but I was able to hold it down. No one really knew I had a problem. I also hung out with a lot of junkies and alcoholics, so like they were always worse than me. So I was like, I'm fine, dude. This guy's doing like ketamine on a Tuesday. I'm not like that. I'm not an addict. And so for years I was able to keep a job and keep a pretty functioning life and drink as much as I wanted, but only at night, only after 6 o'clock. And that worked until it didn't. I got to a very dark place with some stuff that was going on in my life, and I just, I'd started drinking more and more. I eventually lost my job because of that, as I stated, and then I was just drinking all the time. And like I said, I got down to 112, 113 pounds, and my body was giving out, and I wanted to die. I didn't want to be alive anymore, and I determined I was going to drink myself to death. That's what I was going to do. I was going to just keep drinking and not really eating, and eventually my body would give out. We got very close to that point. I probably should have been hospitalized with where my body was. And a comic friend of mine, after an incident where I'd made a complete jackass of myself at a comedian event, at a show, by being a drunk asshole, called me. And he said, hey, man, your drinking's getting really bad. Everyone knows you have a problem. We've been ignoring it for a while, but like you need to get help or you're going to die. So I need you to come with me to an AA meeting. And it was actually 2 comics. It was 2 comics that called me. They were both sober, and they both said that to me. And they were 2 of the last people that kind of put up with me because I got very difficult when I was drinking. I burned a lot of bridges that I still have regret about. A lot of those friendships have come back in sobriety. Some of them haven't, and that's very sad. And that's on me. I'll own that's on me, with my behavior. And They were two of the last people that really like put up with me and were always kind to me. They would see me be a drunk asshole and they would just be like, kind of shirk it off and be like, hey man, you okay? And I was like, yeah. So because they were some of the last people that were tolerant of me, I felt obligated that I would go with them to an AA meeting, because my thought process was, I'm sorry, I can get a little emotional. That's, my thought process was, okay, I'm going to die. And these guys are nice enough to me now that they will probably be some of the few people at my funeral. And I don't want them to have the thought that, like, what if we could have done something? So this is my delusional, self-indulgent, like, addict brain. I was like, I'll go to this AA meeting, right, to appease them, and then they don't have to feel bad when I drink myself to death, because they can say they did everything they could. And that was my thought process. And I went to the AA meeting, and everyone started sharing about their bottom, as we call it in AA, the worst part of their life, the part that got so bad it forced them to come get sober. I don't remember what the topic was, but that's like how the shares ended up going. Because in AA, they'll talk about some stuff, and then people raise their hand, they'll share their experience. And everything they were sharing to me, I was like, what are you all, pussies? That's normal. That happens all the time. What are you fucking talking about? And I realized it's like, oh, these guys are talking about the worst points in their life and the worst things that ever happened to them and how drinking destroyed their lives. And I'm just seeing it as normal because that's my life right now. I'm thinking they're being pussies and that's just how life is, but that's only because that's how life is for me, because I can't stop drinking. And I didn't really think I was an alcoholic before that point. I thought I was making a conscious choice to drink myself to death, and that was like some weird, perverse, romantic thing. I made it into this whole, like, again, I was out of my mind when I was drinking, completely different person. And I started crying in the meeting because I realized, like, oh my God, I'm an alcoholic. And these people are describing my life right now, and they're saying it was the worst part, the worst thing they've ever been through. That's just how I'm choosing to live every day. And so from there, I just kept going to AA, and I really struggled through it. I was probably a worse person my first year or two of sobriety because I had stopped drinking and doing drugs, so I didn't have the crutch, the emotional support of that to turn the world off. But I hadn't built the skill set or anything to get to a point where I was a better person or I was stable. And so I was out of my mind my first year or two of sobriety. I was basically a dry drunk, as they call them, no spirituality, nothing, just kind of white-knuckling it and being miserable and being an asshole to people and being very selfish and horrible. But people in that community put up with me. And that freaked me out because a lot of times in my life when I behaved that way, it was subconsciously to like push people away, to stop people from caring about me. And they just didn't give up on me. They kept calling me. They kept saying hi to me. I would be an asshole to someone one meeting, like spaz on them about some shit that was totally unjustified on my part. And then the next meeting, I'd see them like 2 days later and be like, hey, man, how you doing? Miss you. Glad to have you back. You want to get lunch after this? And it freaked me the fuck. I wasn't used to that. I wasn't used to that being showered with so much kindness and understanding. And those guys, and I say guys, women in AA are very helpful too. I go to men's meetings. That's just, for me, that's what it works. So I'm not saying that to be sexist, just like it was men that helped me get sober. And they saved my fucking life. They saved my fucking life. And I am forever in debt to those two comics, who I still know. They're very good guys. I won't say their names because I'm not sure if they want, I didn't talk to them before this. I'm not sure if they want to publicly be shouted out on this. So I'll be respectful of that. But like, they saved my life. The people in AA saved my life. And now I have a life that is so much better than I ever imagined was possible for me. Because I really didn't want to live anymore. I didn't think it would ever get good. And here we are. And my life is beautiful. And I'm not a millionaire, despite the good stock trades. I'm not a millionaire. I don't own a house. I don't drive a Mercedes or anything. I'm single, which sucks. I'd like to have a wife and kids and a house and all that good stuff. So it's like things like that didn't change. But I wake up every morning and I'm not terrified to be alive. And I don't hate myself. And I can go have a good day. I didn't have a good day for the better part of 10 years, and now I can have a good day, and that's a miracle. And I am so lucky to be surrounded by so many kind, supportive people who have made my life so full and beautiful. And I want to just say that Because if you are listening to this podcast and you're someone who's struggling with addiction, whether it's drugs, alcohol, or maybe you're just struggling with mental health, some depression, something, anxiety, something like that, maybe even just a hard time in your life, you're going through a rough patch right now. I just want to say that, like, I've been there, and I know how bad it can be, and I know that no one could tell me when I was in that place that things could get better. I didn't believe them. I was like, fuck you, maybe it got better for you or this other guy, but I'm different, I'm special, my life's uniquely horrible, I'm like a piece of shit, whatever. You know, I've ruined my life, or I'm just a loser. It is what it is. And I didn't believe him, but I kept doing the work. I kept showing up to AA. And my life did get better. And it's not perfect, but I feel good now. I look forward to life now. I used to be terrified of life, and I look forward to it now. And so if you're in that situation, please know that it can get better. I know it doesn't feel that way right now. I understand. And I'm not diminishing your pain or the situation you're in. I'm sure it is horrible. But it can get better. But you need to do some work to change that. You need to get off the drugs and alcohol. You need to start going to AA or NA or another program. There's many wonderful programs. You need to seek help because there is help for you. And it's not going to be easy, and it's probably going to get worse before it gets better. That was my experience, at least. But it can get better. And you owe it to yourself to get better because you're worth it. And I have unfortunately known a lot of people in my life before sobriety and since sobriety that didn't get sober, and a lot of those guys died. I've been I've been to a lot of funerals of people that I'm not trying to get emotional, but like I've been to a lot of funerals of guys that just couldn't get sober for whatever reason, and they didn't make it. And I remember one time I went to the funeral of a guy who I was very fond of. He was a really good dude. I went to his funeral because he passed away. He was, he had been sober. He was on and off again, right? He was an older guy than me. He's probably, and he would get sober for a couple weeks or months, and then he would go out and he would relapse and he would come right back. He was trying, but he just, he couldn't get out of his own way, and he would go out and he would come back and he would go out and he'd come back. And I always thought, like, okay, people relapse, that happens, but he'll get it one of these days. And then one day he drank and he died. He died from an accident, not a car accident, but like an incident when he was drinking. And I went to that funeral, and it was me and like 3 other guys and his immediate family, and that was it. That was all the people that came to his funeral. It was a very somber event. And it was in a small venue because that's all that could be afforded. And it was, that's years of drinking. That is all that was left to him. And I know for a fact that if I had kept drinking, that would have been my funeral. That's what it would have looked like. There would have been a few people there. Like, I think in total there were 8 people at his funeral. A whole life lived, decades of life, and there were 8 people that showed up to this man's funeral because that's where drinking and addiction had led his life, to burn those bridges and people checking out of his life. And that made me very sad. And I have to remind myself every day that, like, that could have been me. It could still be me. If I slip up, just because I'm sober now doesn't mean I'm going to be sober tomorrow or 10 years or anything. And I don't have a relapse in me. I will probably die if I relapse. So I have to be vigilant about it. And I'm sorry to tell that bummer story and get so emotional, but it's like, this is a serious thing. People do die from this disease. And if you are struggling with addiction and you think you can just I'll figure it out tomorrow, or like I can relapse and come back. My buddy thought that he would figure it out tomorrow, and he's dead. Because that's where this disease takes us. So please get sober today. Please, I'm begging you as a personal favor, please get sober today, because I promise you life can get better and you are worth it. And by the way, that's not the only funeral like that I've been to. It's very common in this community. And I also have a lot of friends that are still alive that never got sober, and their life gets smaller and smaller and sadder, and it's very painful. And I can't help them. I try to encourage them to get sober, but if they don't want to, they don't want to. That's got to be a decision you made. So sorry to get a bummer at the end of I know this is a comedy podcast, and most of you are here for news and things like that, and so this is a little self-indulgent, and I apologize, but just something I had to get off my chest because I do care about it. I only have this platform because of sobriety, by the way. I got sober and I didn't know what to do with myself. I had all this time and I didn't know how to have fun or relax or do anything. So I started posting on social media. That's how I started with history videos back in the day, because I needed something to fill that void in my brain. And I only started podcasting because Matt Lopes, a very funny comic, many of you, if you know me, you probably know him. I met him like right before I got sober. And when I got sober, he wanted to do a podcast with me. And I, for whatever reason, in my like fucked up brain, I thought podcasts were lame. I was like, I'm a real artist. I'm not going to do social media or podcasts. I'm just going to be funny on stage. And I said yes because I first of all, I really like him. He's a funny guy, one of my best friends. But it was really because I needed something to do. I needed to occupy my mind. And we did that podcast for 100-something episodes and became great friends. And with our producer, Ben Kirsch, another hilarious comic. And that podcast really saved my sobriety. It really did. And therefore saved my life, because I had something to look forward to. I was going to hang out with my friends and have a fun conversation. And I'm eternally grateful to them for that. So I owe everything in my life to sobriety. And also, if you know someone in your life who isn't sober, please don't give up on them. I'm not saying enable them or like let them, destroy your life with their chaos. But like those two comics who brought me my first meeting, they had every excuse in the world to write me off and give up on me, and they didn't. And it's because of them that I am still alive. So your actions and your presence, even if you don't think it's a big deal, it is a big deal, and you can really be helping someone without knowing it. So if you have a drug and alcohol, that's my long-winded way of saying if you have a drug or alcohol problem, please get help. Give life a chance. It can get better, and you are worth it, and we need you here. And you can do so much with your life. I never thought this would be my life when I got sober. I thought I was done. I thought I was going to die. An unknown open mic comic who had burned bridges with all his friends, who was broke, and that was going to be it. And that is not what ended up happening. Life got so much better. And I'm not going to sit here and talk about it because that would just be like some weird bragging ego shit. But life has really gotten better. And I got to meet all of you. I got to know all of you through this. And if you are really struggling, DM me on Instagram, man. I'll talk to you. I will. I'll try to get you resources. I'm not a professional. I'm not associated in any capacity with AA like that. But like, DM me. I'll get you in touch with some resources in your area. I have a pretty large network of sobriety over the country and the world, and I'd be happy to help you. You're not bothering me. You're not a burden. I want to see you get better because someone did that for me. So who would I be to not do that for the next guy? And I try, and I'll leave you with this. I know I got a little depressing topic with talking about the guys who didn't survive this disease. But every day I think about the fact that those guys, my friends who passed from this illness, who died from addiction, anytime I'm feeling sorry for myself or I'm like, today sucks, life sucks, I'm a loser, whatever bullshit, I don't have XYZ and I should, I'm being wronged by the world, or it's not fair, or what's even the point? I remind myself that those guys don't get to complain about anything because they're dead. And I got another day, I got one more day that they didn't get. And I'm a believer that I will see those people again when I pass. And how embarrassing would that be if I saw them after life and they were like, oh, what'd you do with all the extra time you got, dude? You must have done awesome. I wish I could have lived another 20, 30 years. What'd you do? Oh, I just went around feeling sorry for myself and thinking everything sucks and being lazy and just awful. I didn't accomplish anything. I didn't appreciate anything. That thought haunts me. And so every day I have to get up and try my best to do my best in life, whether it's comedy or podcasting, social media. I know those things are like frivolous and silly for such a heavy topic, but that's what my life is. That's what I do. But also, even on the days that like that's not possible or things aren't going well in that realm, I can still have gratitude. I can be grateful for the fact I woke up today. I can be grateful for the fact I have a nice warm bed to sleep in and a roof over my head and electricity and food on the table. I can be grateful for the little things because I can still enjoy those things, and a lot of those guys can't anymore. And so I would encourage you to go forth with gratitude, and if you have a problem, please get help. Please contact me again. You can DM me at Chris Warren Comedy on Instagram. I don't really respond to TikTok DMs just because I'm barely on there, but on Instagram, I will do my best to respond to anyone that reaches out needing help. And, life is worth living. Sobriety is worth it. And thank you so much for tuning in for this episode of the podcast. I'm sorry, I know we ended on kind of like a dark note. I didn't mean to, but I actually think it's positive. I think you're capable of more than you think you are. And you need to give yourself the chance to experience that. And if drugs and alcohol are in the way of that, you need to solve that problem. And I'm happy to help however I can. But guys, this has been episode 7 of the War Party Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to be better about posting my show dates on Instagram. I've been very bad about that. I've been performing places and people are like, when are you coming to such and such? I was like, oh, I was just there. And they're like, why didn't you say something? So I'll be better about that. You can follow me at Chris Warren Comedy on Instagram. That's probably the best place to find me. And until next time, guys, be kind to each other, be kind to yourselves, and know that life gets better if you let it. I love you all. Have a great day.